There is a phrase in a major weather analysis published in late July 2026 that every person living within 300 miles of the Atlantic coast needs to read carefully. Not because it is alarming language used to generate clicks, but because it is the honest assessment of what July 2026 has become by the meteorologists who track these events for a living. The headline reads, "July is flash flood emergency season now. Flash flood emergency season. Not severe weather season. Not summer storm season." A category named in real time by the reporters and scientists covering what this particular month has produced across the eastern United States and the Texas Hill Country in the span of 2 weeks. The United States has experienced a spate of flash flood emergencies during the past 2 weeks, illustrating July's dangerous side. Flash flood emergencies are the highest level flood warning, and more than a dozen of them have been issued across the country so far this month. This puts July 2026 within striking distance of a monthly record for such warnings. A flash flood emergency is not a flash flood watch. It is not a flash flood warning. It is the highest level flood alert in the National Weather Service's entire warning hierarchy, a designation reserved for situations where flash flooding is already occurring or is imminent, and where there is an immediate threat to life. It is issued when the combination of rainfall rate, soil saturation, terrain, and drainage infrastructure creates conditions that cannot be safely navigated. It means stop what you are doing and get to higher ground right now. The United States has issued 32 flash flood emergencies in 2026 as of July 21st. That is a significant number. But the distribution within that number is what makes July 2026 genuinely alarming rather than merely statistically notable. Nearly half of 2026's flood emergencies were issued in July alone. 15 emergencies in roughly 2 weeks, not spread across the country in unrelated individual events, but in a cascading, overlapping, sequential pattern of atmospheric setups that has been producing catastrophic rainfall totals in rapid succession across different regions. Texas, then Missouri, then West Virginia, then New York, then Virginia, then the Carolinas, all from the same underlying meteorological architecture. Understanding that architecture is the key to understanding not just what has already happened, but what comes next. Because the atmospheric pattern that produced all 15 of those flash flood emergencies in the past 2 weeks has not fundamentally changed. It has evolved. And what it is evolving toward, the flash flood threat now targeting southeastern Virginia through northern Georgia, and the tropical disturbance developing in the Gulf of Mexico behind it, is a continuation of the same story under slightly different configurations. Start with Texas, because the Texas event is the one that most clearly illustrates what July 2026 has become in terms of statistical extremity. Between July 15th and 17th, a 1,000-year flood hit the Texas Hill Country. The phrase 1,000-year flood carries a precise statistical meaning that is frequently misunderstood. It does not mean a flood that occurs once every 1,000 years. It means a flood with a 0.1% probability of occurring in any given year. In a geographic region with a long enough history, you expect to see such an event roughly once per millennium on average. In the Texas Hill Country specifically, you saw it in 2025 and in 2026, 2 consecutive years. 2 events each with a 0.1% annual probability striking the same region in back-to-back summers. A 1,000-year flood hit Texas Hill Country between July 15th and 17th. Some areas received almost a year's worth of precipitation in just a few days, sending deadly waves of water shooting down rivers and streams. This was the second year in a row that one hit this part of central Texas. The July 2025 Texas Hill Country flood was the deadliest inland flooding event in the United States since the 1976 Big Thompson River flood, killing at least 139 people in Kerr County alone. The 2026 event killed at least 8 people in and around Uvalde, where a vehicle was photographed sitting in floodwater on July 17th as hundreds of water rescues were conducted across the county. The specific physical reason the same region experienced back-to-back 1,000-year events is the same reason the East Coast is now facing elevated flash flood risk in late July. The atmospheric pattern that has dominated the central and eastern United States for the past 3 weeks is a slow-moving, moisture-laden system that concentrates rainfall over the same geography in repeated episodes rather than moving through quickly. The pattern is the same one this channel described when it began on July 14th. A western ridge of high pressure anchored over the northern plains and upper Midwest, a heat dome that has been running temperatures 20 to 25 degrees above average across the central states for weeks, whose eastern flank acts as a conveyor belt for disturbances tracking southeast into the deeply moist air mass sitting over the south central and eastern United States. When those disturbances move slowly, when the atmospheric steering flow is weak, as it has been repeatedly this month, they linger over the same geography and train rainfall totals that accumulate to catastrophic levels in a matter of hours. The Texas Hill Country's steep creek valleys and narrow canyons concentrate that rainfall into walls of water. Moving downstream faster than early warning systems can guarantee evacuation in all affected areas. 4 days after Texas, West Virginia experienced its own version of the same story. Historic flooding in Upshur County and widespread impacts from severe thunderstorms prompted West Virginia Governor Patrick Morrisey to declare a state of emergency for all 55 counties on July 24th. Buckhannon was close to record levels, reportedly reaching major flood stage for the first time on record. Meanwhile, torrential rainfall totals of up to 127 millimeters, 5 inches, caused extensive damage and multiple road closures. The Sand Run stream gauge near Buckhannon, hitting major flood stage for the first time in its recorded history, is the detail that the governor's emergency declaration needs to be read against. Not the first time in decades, the first time on record. A gauge that has been documenting water levels through every previous flood in its operational lifetime, including the catastrophic 2016 West Virginia floods that killed 23 people, including the 2016 floods that swept away entire communities in Kanawha County, hit a level on July 21st, 2026 that it had never previously reached. A state of emergency for all 55 counties of West Virginia is not a routine declaration. It activates the full emergency management apparatus of the state simultaneously. Every county emergency management coordinator, every search and rescue team, every National Guard resource available. The governor does not declare a statewide emergency for a localized event. He declares it when the geographic scope and severity of the disaster exceed what county-level response can address. On July 21st, the flooding was happening in enough separate locations across enough separate watersheds that the county-level emergency response structure was insufficient. All 55 counties simultaneously. While West Virginia was flooding and the Kentucky and Ohio tornadoes were cutting through the same storm system's southern edge, New York City was preparing for what Mayor Eric Adams called one of the most dangerous flash flood scenarios the city had faced in the recent era of increasingly extreme weather events. More than 60 million people from Ohio to Massachusetts and Virginia were bracing for possible flash flooding on Monday, following a deadly holiday weekend heat wave that left much of the East Coast sweltering in triple-digit temperatures. New York City and Long Island appeared to be in the storm center of the storm zone with a level 3 out of 4 threat for flash flooding. Up to 3 inches of rain per hour was possible in some parts of the Northeast, and some areas could receive up to 8 inches. 3 inches of rain per hour in New York City. In a city where the storm drain and combined sewer system was designed generations ago in a climate that was not producing 3-inch per hour rainfall rates in July, for a population where 100,000 people live in basement apartments that sit below the street-level drainage threshold. The mayor asked New Yorkers in basement apartments to plan to evacuate. City workers were dispatched over the weekend before the storm to clear catch basins in historically flood-prone neighborhoods. The flood watch covered the entire New York City metropolitan area. In Woodside, Queens, firefighters drove through floodwaters to rescue trapped drivers on the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, while in Flushing, Queens, homeowners reported extensive damage caused by flooding. The Brooklyn-Queens Expressway is one of the most heavily traveled highway corridors in the United States. It is also one of the most topographically and hydrologically vulnerable sections of urban highway infrastructure in the northeastern United States, sitting in a below-grade cut through dense residential neighborhoods with limited lateral drainage options. When enough rain falls fast enough in the neighborhoods above it, the BQE becomes a catch basin. Firefighters in boats on a New York City expressway rescuing drivers whose vehicles stalled in floodwater. That image is not background weather news. It is evidence of a gap between the drainage infrastructure a city was built with and the rainfall intensity a changing climate is delivering to it. The physics behind why New York City is increasingly vulnerable to exactly this scenario is straightforward. The city's combined sewer system, a 19th century design concept that routes both stormwater runoff and sanitary sewage through the same pipe network, was engineered for the rainfall intensities common in the 19th century climate of the northeastern United States. The design storm that determined pipe sizing, inlet spacing, and outfall capacity used historical data that no longer accurately represents what the atmosphere delivers to the city's drainage system. When rainfall rates exceed the system's design capacity, the excess has to go somewhere. It goes into streets, into subway stations, into basements, onto highway surfaces. The infrastructure failure is not the pipe breaking. It is the pipe performing exactly as designed in conditions it was not designed for. There have been 15 flash flood emergencies over the past 2 weeks. West Virginia experienced record flooding during one on Tuesday night, Utah on Sunday in a wildfire burn scar. Missouri's 1,000-year rainfall event came the week before Texas, as campers were rescued from cabin rooftops and trees. Missouri, Utah, Texas, West Virginia, New York. These events are not the same storm. They are separate atmospheric setups in different parts of the country separated by days. What they share is the same meteorological context. An atmospheric pattern that has been producing slow-moving, training thunderstorm complexes, Storms that organize into lines and move repeatedly over the same ground in the presence of atmospheric moisture content that reflects the anomaly warm Gulf of Mexico, Atlantic, and Caribbean sea surface temperatures of summer 2026. The moisture is not running out. The pattern that organized it into extreme rainfall events has been persistent for weeks, and it has not ended. After rounds of severe weather from the Great Lakes to the East Coast Tuesday and Wednesday, meteorologists are watching for a greater risk of flash flooding across the mid-Atlantic and into the southeast through the end of the week. The flash flooding threat will focus from southeastern Virginia to northern Georgia and Alabama. This is the immediate current threat. The flash flooding threat that was published on July 21st, and that has been evolving through July 23rd and 24th, is targeting a corridor from southeastern Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Hampton Roads, southward through the Carolinas into northern Georgia and Alabama. This is not the same geography as the Kentucky and Ohio tornadoes from earlier this week, or the New York City event from early July. It is the next geography in the sequence. The storm system's moisture and instability having moved southward and eastward as the pattern evolves. The specific communities in southeastern Virginia, Hampton Roads, the Norfolk, Virginia Beach metropolitan area face a compound flooding risk that is different in character from inland flash flooding. The region sits at sea level at the outlet of the Chesapeake Bay, and it has the highest rate of relative sea level rise of any major population center on the U.S. East Coast. A combination of actual sea level rise from ocean warming and land subsidence from groundwater extraction and natural compaction. When heavy rainfall coincides with a high tide or coastal storm surge in this region, stormwater that would normally drain toward the ocean has nowhere to go. The ocean is at the same level or higher than the drainage outlet. The result is bidirectional flooding, rainfall coming in from above, while tidal water prevents drainage below. Now, the wild card. The element of this story that could extend the flash flood threat along the East Coast from a day or two into a week or more. Pockets of heavy rain and isolated flash flooding will occur farther to the south, and especially in the vicinity of Bertha near the Gulf Coast. Tropical Storm Bertha, the second named storm of the 2026 Atlantic hurricane season, has been described by every major forecasting agency as expected to produce below normal activity this year due to El Niño suppression. Below normal does not mean zero. It means fewer storms and weaker storms on average, with the specific asterisk that the Gulf of Mexico, at current water temperatures running 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit above historical average, provides a ready environment for rapid development of any disturbance that forms close to shore. A Gulf of Mexico tropical system developing on an already active stalled front is exactly the type of event that the late July outlook was describing when it flagged the vicinity of Bertha as an additional flash flood concern. If Bertha develops and tracks northward along the Gulf Coast, as many warm season Gulf systems do, its circulation would pull additional tropical moisture into the already deeply moist air mass sitting over the southeastern United States and potentially extend the rainfall threat northward into the Carolinas, Virginia, and even the mid-Atlantic states that are already seeing elevated flood risk from the non-tropical part of the pattern. The honest characterization of Bertha's potential impact as of today is uncertain. The National Hurricane Center's track and intensity forecast for systems still in early development carry meaningful uncertainty at 5-day range. What is not uncertain is the moisture environment Bertha would be drawing from, the same anomalously warm Gulf water that fueled the early July outbreak, and the fact that the atmospheric pattern over the southeastern United States is already primed for excessive rainfall from the same combination of features that produced the 15 flash flood emergencies of the past 2 weeks. The number of flash flood emergencies issued in the U.S. this year continues to tick up, and the tally stands at 32 as of July 24th. While this year is running behind 2025's 49 emergencies at this point in the year and 2024's 38 such warnings, nearly half of 2026's flood emergencies were issued in July alone, and many of them have been catastrophic. 2024 is the record holder for the most flash flood emergencies in a single year with 93 such warnings. Last year had 55. The trend embedded in those numbers deserves a slow read. 2024, 93 flash flood emergencies. 2025, 55. 2026. 32 as of July 21st, on a pace that could approach the previous year's totals if August and September deliver the kind of activity July has. And behind the annual totals, the qualitative reality. Many of the 2026 emergencies have been catastrophic in their physical impacts. 1,000-year events, Ricard gauge levels, state of emergency declarations, fatalities. The July 2026 flash flood pattern is not an accident of atmospheric chance. It is the expression of specific physical conditions that are measurably different from the baseline of even a decade ago. Gulf of Mexico, sea surface temperatures running 2 to 4 degrees above historical average. Atlantic moisture content at the atmospheric levels that feed thunderstorms elevated to match. The polar vortex and jet stream behaving in ways producing persistent, blocked, slow-moving patterns that extend the residence time of individual weather setups over the same geographic areas. And underneath all of it, the accumulated effect of the developing climate trends reorganizing the tropical moisture flux in ways that make the Gulf a more reliable and more intense moisture source than historical baselines reflect. The practical message for people in the current threat zone, southeastern Virginia, the Carolinas, northern Georgia, is the same message that every severe weather event this month has validated. The flash flood emergency is the highest alert the National Weather Service issues. It means immediate threat to life. When it is issued for your county, the decision to drive through a flooded road is not a calculation about whether the water looks shallow enough. It is a calculation about whether you are willing to bet your life on a depth that moving water makes impossible to judge from inside a vehicle. Turn around, don't drown. Not as a slogan, but as the specific operational rule that has more consistently saved lives in flash flood events than any other single piece of guidance the National Weather Service issues. The pattern behind July 2026's flooding is not going to resolve in the next 48 hours. The atmospheric setup that has been producing sequential flash flood emergencies across the eastern half of the United States since mid-month is evolving. The specific locations of highest threat are shifting, but the fundamental architecture, the western heat dome and the moist conveyor belt on its eastern flank, remains in place through the end of July in current model guidance. That means the communities that have not yet seen their event, the ones currently watching the flash flood threat track toward the southeast, are watching the same pattern that produced a 1,000-year flood in Texas, a record stream gauge in West Virginia, and BQE rescues in Queens come for them. The time to prepare is before the warning is issued. The time to know where the higher escape route from the flood-prone road runs is right now, while the rain is not yet falling. This is not a call to panic. It is a call to treat the alerts with the seriousness they are intended to carry. A flash flood emergency is not a suggestion. It is a directive. It is the National Weather Service saying, in the clearest terms available, that the conditions outside are immediately life-threatening, and that the normal rules of travel and movement do not apply. For those in basement apartments in urban areas, the guidance is equally clear. If you are in a below-grade dwelling in a flood-prone zone and a flash flood emergency is issued, you should have a plan to move to higher ground before the water rises. This is not hypothetical. In New York City, multiple fatalities in recent years have occurred when people in basement apartments were unable to escape rising floodwaters during flash flood emergencies. The city has begun to map these vulnerabilities more explicitly, and emergency managers are increasingly direct in their messaging. If you are in a basement in a flood zone and a flash flood emergency is issued, leave. For those in vehicles, the message is the same. Do not attempt to drive through flooded roads. It takes only 18 inches of moving water to float a typical sedan and 2 feet of water to carry away most SUVs and pickup trucks. The depth is not the only danger. The current is. Moving water exerts tremendous force, and it can sweep a vehicle off the road even if the water appears shallow. It can also hide hazards beneath the surface, washed out sections of road, debris, open manholes. The only safe choice is to turn around and find an alternate route. For those in homes near creeks, streams, or low-lying areas, the guidance is to monitor local conditions closely, to know the evacuation routes, and to be prepared to leave if water begins to rise rapidly. Flash floods can develop in minutes, and the difference between safety and disaster can be a matter of seconds. The National Weather Service issues flash flood warnings and emergencies based on radar estimates, gauge readings, and spotter reports, but there is always a lag between the onset of flooding and the issuance of the alert. If you see water rising, do not wait for the warning. Act immediately. The broader context for all of this is the changing climate. The atmosphere is warmer, and a warmer atmosphere holds more moisture. That means when it rains, it can rain harder. The jet stream is behaving differently, producing more persistent patterns that allow storms to linger over the same areas. Sea levels are rising, making coastal flooding more likely and more severe. These are not future scenarios. They are current realities, and they are playing out in real time in the form of the 15 flash flood emergencies that have been issued in the past 2 weeks alone. That changing climate is not a distant abstraction. It is the reason why a 1,000-year flood can hit the same region 2 years in a row. It is the reason why a stream gauge in West Virginia can hit a level it has never reached in its entire operational history. It is the reason why New York City can experience rainfall rates that exceed the design capacity of its century-old drainage system. And it is the reason why the flash flood threat is now shifting toward the southeast, where the combination of warm Gulf waters, a moist atmosphere, and a slow-moving pattern is setting the stage for another round of potentially catastrophic flooding. The communities in the path of this threat, southeastern Virginia, the Carolinas, northern Georgia, Alabama, need to understand that they are not facing a routine summer rain event. They are facing the next chapter in a sequence that has already produced record-breaking floods, multiple fatalities, and statewide emergencies across the eastern half of the country. The pattern is the same. The moisture is the same. The only thing that has changed is the location. For those in Hampton Roads, Norfolk, and Virginia Beach, the risk is compounded by the region's unique vulnerability to sea level rise. The area is sinking while the ocean is rising, creating a situation where drainage is increasingly difficult even under normal conditions. When heavy rain coincides with high tide, the water has nowhere to go. Streets flood, basements flood, highways flood, and the flooding lasts longer because the tide prevents the water from draining away. This is not a future problem. It is happening now. The Catch the King tidal inundation mapping events, which have been conducted annually in Hampton Roads for nearly a decade, have documented the increasing frequency and severity of tidal flooding in the region. The data is clear. The water is higher, the flooding is worse, and the drainage is slower. And when you add heavy rainfall to that mix, the result is a compound flooding event that is more severe and more dangerous than either rainfall or tide alone. For those in the Carolinas and northern Georgia, the risk is more traditional flash flooding, rapid rises in creeks and streams, road washouts, and the potential for life-threatening situations in low-lying areas. The terrain in these regions is often steep, and the soils can become saturated quickly, leading to rapid runoff and dangerous flash floods. The same atmospheric pattern that produced the Texas and West Virginia floods is now setting up over these areas, and the potential for similar outcomes is real. The wild card in all of this is Tropical Storm Bertha. As of late July, Bertha is a tropical storm in the Gulf of Mexico, and its track and intensity are still uncertain. But even if Bertha remains weak, its circulation can pull additional moisture into the already saturated atmosphere over the southeast, enhancing the rainfall potential and extending the duration of the threat. If Bertha strengthens or tracks farther north than currently expected, the impacts could be even more significant. The National Hurricane Center is monitoring Bertha closely, and forecasts will be updated regularly as new data becomes available. But even without Bertha, the atmospheric pattern over the southeast is already primed for excessive rainfall. The moisture is in place. The steering currents are weak. The instability is high. All of the ingredients are there for another round of dangerous flash flooding. The question now is not whether the threat is real. It is. The question is whether people in the affected areas will take it seriously. Will they heed the warnings? Will they avoid flooded roads? Will they have a plan in place if the water rises? The answer to those questions will determine not just the outcome of this event, but the toll it takes in lives and property. The pattern behind July 2026's flooding is not going away. It is evolving, shifting, and moving to new areas. The communities that have not yet been hit are next in line. And the only way to reduce the risk is to prepare, to stay informed, and to act when the warnings are issued. The time to do that is now, before the rain starts falling and the water begins to rise. That preparation begins with understanding the alerts. The National Weather Service uses a hierarchy of flood products: flood watches, flood warnings, flash flood watches, flash flood warnings, and flash flood emergencies. Each one carries a different level of urgency. A watch means conditions are favorable for flooding. A warning means flooding is imminent or occurring. An emergency means the flooding is particularly dangerous and life-threatening. When a flash flood emergency is issued, it is not a suggestion. It is a directive to take immediate action to protect your life. For those in flood-prone areas, preparation also means knowing your risk. Are you in a basement apartment? Are you near a creek or stream? Are you in a low-lying area where water tends to pool? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, you need to have a plan. Where will you go if the water rises? How will you get there? What will you take with you? These are not questions to answer after the rain starts. They are questions to answer now, while the weather is calm and the roads are dry. For those who drive, preparation means knowing the flood-prone roads in your area and avoiding them when rain is forecast. It means having an alternate route planned in case your usual roads are closed. And it means never, under any circumstances, attempting to drive through flooded roads. The water is deeper than it looks, the current is stronger than it appears, and the consequences of being wrong are fatal. For communities, preparation means having emergency plans in place, testing them regularly, and ensuring that residents know what to do when a flood warning is issued. It means clearing drainage systems, marking evacuation routes, and having resources ready to respond when the water rises. It means taking the threat seriously, not as a once-in-a-lifetime event, but as a recurring reality in a changing climate. The reality is that the pattern behind July 2026's flooding is not unique. It is the new normal. The atmosphere is warmer, the moisture is higher, and the patterns are more persistent. That means more frequent and more severe flooding events, not just in July, but throughout the year. The communities that adapt to this reality will fare better than those that do not. And the adaptation begins with understanding the risk and taking it seriously. The current threat to the southeast is just the latest example of this new reality. The moisture is in place. The pattern is set. The only uncertainty is how much rain will fall and where it will fall the heaviest. But the potential for dangerous and life-threatening flooding is real, and it is not going away. The time to prepare is now, before the rain starts and the water begins to rise. As the pattern evolves, the threat will shift to new areas. The communities that have not yet been hit need to be ready. The same ingredients that produced the Texas and West Virginia floods are now moving toward the southeast. And the potential for similar outcomes is real. The only way to reduce the risk is to prepare, to stay informed, and to act when the warnings are issued. The National Weather Service will continue to issue updates as the situation develops. Forecasts will be refined, warnings will be issued, and emergencies will be declared as needed. The key is to pay attention, to take the alerts seriously, and to act accordingly. The water is coming. The only question is whether you will be ready. That readiness is not just about individual actions. It is about community resilience. It is about building infrastructure that can handle the rainfall of a warmer world. It is about updating drainage systems, elevating roads, and designing buildings that can withstand the floods of the future. It is about investing in early warning systems, emergency response capabilities, and public education campaigns that ensure everyone knows what to do when the water rises. The cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of preparation. Every flood that catches a community off guard results in lost lives, damaged property, and disrupted livelihoods. Every flood that is anticipated and prepared for results in fewer casualties, less damage, and a quicker recovery. The choice is clear. Prepare now or pay later. The pattern behind July 2026's flooding is a reminder of that choice. It is a reminder that the climate is changing, that the risks are real, and that the time to act is now. The communities that heed that reminder will be better off than those that do not. And the individuals who take the threat seriously will be safer than those who do not. As the flash flood threat moves toward the southeast, the message is clear. Be ready. Know your risk. Have a plan. And act when the warnings are issued. The water is coming. The only question is whether you will be prepared. The National Weather Service will continue to monitor the situation and issue updates as needed. Forecasts will be refined, warnings will be issued, and emergencies will be declared as the situation evolves. The key is to stay informed, to take the alerts seriously, and to act accordingly. The time to prepare is now, before the rain starts and the water begins to rise. For those in the current threat zone, southeastern Virginia, the Carolinas, northern Georgia, Alabama, the message is urgent. This is not a routine summer rain event. This is the next chapter in a sequence that has already produced record-breaking floods, multiple fatalities, and statewide emergencies. The pattern is the same. The moisture is the same. The only thing that has changed is the location. The time to act is now. Know your evacuation routes. Avoid flooded roads. Have a plan for your family. And heed the warnings when they are issued. The water is coming. The only question is whether you will be ready. Subscribe and turn on notifications for continuing coverage. Flash flood watches and warnings for the southeastern United States are updating continuously. The track and intensity forecasts for tropical systems will become clearer in the next 24 to 48 hours. And when the next flash flood emergency is issued, and based on July 2026's pace, another one will be, this channel will have the coverage before it reaches anywhere else.